A quick note before we begin. This episode was previously recorded and Mark has since moved into a new role at the Ruffed Grouse and American Woodcock Society. But please enjoy his wealth of experience from spending over 20 years at the National Wild Turkey Federation. Okay, now on to the episode. How does hunting fit into modern wildlife management, and what role do conservation nonprofits play? In this episode, we talk turkey with our friends at the National Wild Turkey Federation. We dig into their history, their boots-on-the-ground conservation efforts, and the big-picture role hunters play in wildlife restoration. You'll also hear about my first turkey hunt. Spoiler alert, there were some missed shots. And we get real about the importance of community and partnerships in conservation. This is the Our Wild Lives podcast, brought to you by the Wildlife Society.
Mark, you're the National Director of Science and Planning, been with the Turkey Federation 20 years. Tell us a little bit about Turkey Federation's history. And what we were doing here was a partner hunt. You've been doing those for quite a while. Why don't you tell us about Turkey Federation and then these partner hunts?
Pleasure to be here today having this conversation because, again, it's really about partnerships and relationships. But a little bit about the NWTF is that we were founded in 1973, really focused on the conservation of wild turkey and preservation of our hunting heritage. And in 1973, there were about 1.3 million turkeys across the country. So over the years, we've invested over $500 million into wildlife conservation through habitat, impacted nearly 25 million acres on the ground. And we've also have the benefit of having the dual mission of really focusing on hunting heritage, introducing people to hunting, trying to remove barriers, and really have that outdoor experience. Because we think that's really a hand in glove. So when you think about conservation, you have to have hunting in it from our perspective. And so over the years, we've been really focused on that, growing those programs. And one thing we always try to do is build relationships with partners because we have to have trust in the system. And so what we end up doing is we utilize these partner hunts kind of like our golf course. We're able to bring people in over the years. Since I've been here for 20 years, we've done these almost every year in some capacity or the other with industry, with conservation partners, with introductory hunts or mentored hunts. And so this year, we've got you all out here really to kind of build a relationship, understand what hunting is, understand the camaraderie it creates, and also understand how it's done correctly and why it's done and what tool it is when it comes to wildlife management.
Yeah, and everybody should know the Wildlife Society has positions on responsible human use, responsible hunting, but sustainable harvest management is a key component of wildlife management broadly. So this meshes up really nice.
Yeah, and you can't have conservation without hunting. It's multiple use, it's wise use. And so we feel like it's a funding source for wildlife conservation, and we've got to turn the tide on the number of hunters we have. We got to recruit, retain, reactivate with the R3 movement that we've got going on as well.
Well, and that $500 million that you mentioned helps all kinds of different species with the habitat conservation efforts that you do.
Yeah, it's interesting because all the work we're doing, it's never a turkeys only project. It's turkeys is the building upon the passion we have with our volunteers, building upon their interest and their focus of hunting, but non-game, game, endangered species, any leverage we can have to do great conservation work, we're going to take advantage of it.
So Jen, tell us about your role at the Turkey Federation, because we have a new hunter here with us. You focus on that quite a bit, don't you?
Yeah, I do. So my title is the Hunting and Shooting R3 Coordinator for the state of Michigan. And what that means is that I work to recruit, retain, and reactivate hunters and folks interested in shooting sports as well, all over the state of Michigan. So we participate in a lot of mentored hunts and things like this, like a hunt camp to keep people engaged. But we also help out schools that are trying to start archery in the school program and things like that. So it's a pretty diverse program, but really engaging folks on all those hunting and shooting ways of getting outdoors and appreciating the resource and understanding why it's good to engage in those conservation activities and to vote on conservation policy, as well as spending money on things that feed into that conservation funding.
Great. We're going to come back to that and get to Katie and hear about her first experience hunting. But Teresa, tell us about your role.
I have been with the Turkey Federation almost 18 years in May, and I started to work with the Turkey Federation in the education and outreach program, specifically the Women in the Outdoors program. So my role now is to work on a national level through our programs. We have 3 that have been part of NWTF since 1980. We have the Jakes program, which is for our youth. We have Women in the Outdoors, obviously for ladies, and we also have the Wheeling Sportsman program. We have added to that over the years with our 3 coming on board. We have a lot of mentored hunts for families. We do mentored hunts for collegiate. We have a lot of collegiate opportunities, and we're just trying to engage folks. So I work with our local and state NWTF chapters to help them plan and facilitate these type of events all over the country. So my main goal is working with our volunteers who are so passionate about NWTF and getting folks outdoors.
Volunteers for organizations like yours and Mule Deer Foundation, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, many others, that volunteer component is absolutely critical, isn't it?
So we have about 500,000 members around the country. Or I'm sorry, 250,000 members. Wish we had 500,000 members right now. That's our stretch goal, and it is actually a stretch goal for us over the next 10 years to get to 500,000, because that raises our voice and we can be more influential when it comes to public policy and conservation policy. But as we sit today, we have about 250,000 members around the country, and we have a volunteer system that actually runs our events around the country. So not all members are volunteers, but all of our volunteers are members. And so we have fundraising events where we generate the funding, which allows us to invest that into conservation, into hunting heritage, and outreach and education programs. But we couldn't do the work without them. They're invaluable for us because they lead our state efforts, they lead our local efforts. They're within the communities. They're working with the banks and the car dealerships and all the local businesses that support hunting, and they're talking to them and they're getting donations. And so it's this network of influence is really there. And so that volunteer base drives the machine for funding for us organizationally. And so it's critical for us. And without them, we couldn't do the work we're doing. We really owe our success to them, and we owe our success to our partnerships.
We'll be right back after this short break. Love wildlife? Join the Wildlife Society to connect with a community of professionals working to advance wildlife science and conservation. Membership gives you access to exclusive resources, job boards, publications like The Wildlife Professional, discounts, and networking opportunities across North America. Learn more and join today at wildlife.org/join.
So, my co-host Katie got to go on her very first hunt.
Sure did.
And it was a wild turkey hunt here in northern Nebraska. Why don't you tell us what you thought of your experience?
We've had a really awesome week. The weather's been amazing, and we've been hearing and seeing so many turkeys. And so we've been hunting we had 2 days of hunting, and I was able to harvest my first bird on the first day, just as we were packing up to leave. And so I've always grown up around people who hunt and the outdoors and conservation, but it was never an opportunity that I had myself. And so that's why I'm so thankful for NWTF for programs like this, for getting women and new hunters out into the field, because, I'm an adult now, and this was my very first time shooting a shotgun and sitting in a blind and wearing camo. And so it was just a really, really phenomenal experience to be able to come out here and really learn and get rid of some of those stigmas that I think I had been holding against hunting, because I am a conservationist and I do care deeply about wildlife and wildlife conservation. And to be able to see that there really is an opportunity and that hunting does fit in with that has been really eye-opening. And it was a whirlwind of emotions, the first time I saw the turkey come out in front of us. And I actually, full transparency, missed twice on my first bird that I had the opportunity.
And hadn't shot it before.
Yeah.
Stock was a little short.
Yeah. So, I learned that I was thinking about how to shoot a gun all wrong the very first time.
We were able to talk it through in the blind.
Right.
And I asked you a few questions about what you saw, and you were able to kind of focus on the decoy and practice it, and it worked out really well.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, Katie, I know I shared this earlier. Everybody's missed a turkey. Yes. And so you just got it out of the way early, and then that way it's done. You don't have to worry about it anymore. But I've missed turkeys. I know Ed's missed turkeys. I mean, it's just.
I miss turkeys too.
Yeah. I mean, we've all missed turkeys, except for Teresa. She's kind of the dead eye over there. But if you hunt long enough and you hunt enough, you're going to miss a turkey. But the thing is that's an okay process. You learn from it, you correct it, and then you understand you want to have that most ethical harvest because we want to maintain that. But, that's an okay process. And the stigma that somebody says, oh, you're not a hunter if you miss a turkey. Everybody misses a turkey or an animal. I mean, it's just.
Anyone that says that.
Everybody that says that is probably not being real honest.
Right.
But maybe they are. Maybe they're just better hunters than I am. But that's a great.
Maybe not hunters.
Yeah, that's just part of the process.
Right. And they were clean misses too. So it was still. He didn't even know what was happening. He just heard a bang, and I mean, the shot was so far over his head, it was not coming close. So we missed that one, and then had some more time in the blind. And right as we were getting ready to pack up, I was standing up to put my vest on, and I spotted another group of jakes coming through the trees. And so we were able to call them over, and it was a tricky shot. There was a group of 3, and they were not wanting to break up. And then finally, right as the light's going down, I'm getting worried. I missed my first one. And then finally one of them breaks away, and I was able to make a clean shot. I felt really proud of myself for having that failure earlier in the day and being able to come back out and stay there and maintain being patient and just really be able to correct those mistakes. So it was a really rewarding moment, and I'm excited to have some meat in the fridge or the freezer and, learn the other part of hunting, which is how to use the meat and how to use, we've got the feathers and things of that nature. So I'm really excited to figure out how to bring that part of it into my life as well.
Jen, in all of your work, is this a fairly typical story that you hear from first-time hunters?
Yes, especially if they've got this kind of support, like having the community with you and being able to process through those misses with someone. I think when people try to do it on their own, or if they do it without a supportive community, with a community that's a little bit more pushy maybe, they could have those misses and feel like quitting. And so having that support network, which is, what we do, like that's what we try to create when we build events, is to have some kind of support network there so that when you're learning, we can reassure you that this is something that happens and help you walk through the process of continuing on in order to have a success. And really supporting you too in defining your success, right? Like you harvested a bird, but if that wasn't your goal, if you wanted to come out here to see the landscape and to see the beauty and to hear the birds and see the birds, that's a valid form of success too. And so I think the way that you talk through what you experienced, it is typical in a supportive environment. But we do hear from people who don't have supportive environments who are coming back and giving it a second shot because maybe when they were kids, they went out with somebody who put a little too much pressure on them. And so, yeah, I think it's important to be aware that it can go a different way. And so we try to avoid that if we can. So I'm glad that you had that experience with us.
That's a really important point because I've told you guys who my mentor was when I was growing up. It was my grandfather. And I learned all the ethics and just everything there was about how to hunt, but also how to hunt ethically, but also to just capture the experience. And my experience is a lot of late onset hunters, people that started as an adult, didn't have that kind of mentoring. Either that or maybe they had a different approach or attitude about hunting. Their family may have, but they didn't want to at that moment in time.
I probably had a very similar process as you had, Ed, is I was brought into a farming. My grandparents had a farm. I hunted and fished with my uncles and my cousins. My dad did not hunt. He still to this day does not hunt. But it was something that I had that pathway to work with my uncle and my cousin. And it was a passion. I've been able to turn it into a career. But that was a progressional change for me. Like I started out squirrel hunting and then I dove hunted. But when individuals jump into this, turkey hunting it's a larger animal. It's pressure because you're seeing other people do it. You have all of these other things, but it's still progressional. If you would have come out here, any of us come out here and said, harvesting a bird for me on this trip wasn't the priority. It was the conversations. It was getting to know people. It was to really just have, an experience. Because, Katie, you mentioned preparing the food. When you sit down and you share your meal with somebody, with your family or anybody else, you're gonna know, this was cool, and you're gonna retell the stories.
That's the ultimate outcome of a hunt, really.
It is. I'll go back and, Ed, we've known each other for 20 years, but we're gonna share this hunt forever, in conversations and laughs and stories. And so it's all those things. And Teresa, before you came to work for the Turkey Federation, you weren't a hunter. And now you're actually helping build programs with our volunteers and members to create programming for new hunters. So that's a pretty neat experience because you understand kind of the emotions that they were going through.
Absolutely. I'm a little bit like Katie. I grew up in a home where I didn't have the opportunity to hunt either. So I never hunted until I started to work for the Turkey Federation. And, learning the things to do and not to do, especially with safety. That's a big thing with me, making sure that those who participate in any of our programs are safe, especially our mentored hunts, and knowing how to properly mentor someone like you did with Katie when you missed the bird. You didn't scold her. You didn't make her feel like a failure.
How did you miss that? It was right
Exactly. Exactly. And
there. None of that going on.
And you had that community that helped you. And I experienced, if I can share this story, I experienced one time on a hunt, and I was a very new hunter at this time, and I had someone sitting next to me who was my mentor at the time, and he was telling me to shoot a bird that I could not see. And I didn't make the shot. And when we got back to camp, he began to tell folks that I had an opportunity to shoot the bird and didn't take it. And I went back to work the next day, and I said, I don't want to hunt anymore. So having someone that helps you, mentor you, and teaching you what's right and encouraging you along the way is so important in creating long-standing hunters.
Or individuals, Katie, you may not become a hardcore turkey hunter, and that's perfectly all right. But you understand as these things come up in ballots and policy and a voice, you're going to say, man, hunting is important. Hunting is good. It's not that stigma that it's bad. So not everybody is going to be a hunter. But our hope is that everybody start to understand that it has a place in conservation.
Yeah.
And that's why our partnership with TWS has been so great. Because I've been a member. I was a student chapter president at Murray State when I was at graduate school. Led the Southeastern Wildlife Conclave, all of these pieces. And so I understand the importance of the Wildlife Society and that structure. And so it's really rewarding for me from the standpoint of, with me, to rebuild and to really put the partnership with TWS on steroids as far as supporting the events and the chapters, because research is so critical to the NWTF as well. And so that the connection's been great, and it's been great to build upon that.
Well, but that training too, because you hire, how many biologists do you hire?
We've got about 75 professional, either foresters or biologists, and most of our foresters have dual degrees, or they are forestry with a wildlife emphasis. So we're managing forests not for timber production, we're managing forests for wildlife. Right. And so when we're doing that, multiple objectives and meeting the landowner with those objectives. So we encourage all of our staff to be members of the Wildlife Society.
I think most of them are. I think, Pat, one of your biologists told me that they were very proud that all of the biologists were members of TWS. Yeah. A good chunk of them are certified.
That's a great thing, because we feel like it's just the next step. And so it's a great process. It's a great partnership, and again, I think being the voice of hunters, which we have because of our dual mission, gives us that opportunity as well. We're unique when you think about the other groups with that. Not to say we're any better, but we approach things differently.
Well, and that's the critical nature of our relationship with all of our partners, including NWTF, is giving the skill set, the leadership skills, the talents to work with landowners and federal agencies and all these diverse entities that we have to work with, and the public on any given day, to explain wildlife conservation, to explain science. I think that's the real joy of these partnerships.
Yeah.
Is that
information is power, and then you can influence, and if you're more diverse with your education, from my perspective, you have the ability to really connect with landowners, public landowners, agencies, private landowners, and hunters, and say, man, this is why we're doing this. And I think if you can do that, then you're going to be successful.
My experience, particularly with late onset hunters, is the experience is far more important than the harvest itself. But just that understanding of, I'm explaining stuff all the time. Okay, you see that fire scar, that probably burned 5 years ago. You just immerse yourself in a landscape and you see things a little differently. You're looking through a different lens. I can tell you, Katie's got eagle, eyes. She was seeing all kinds of stuff. Not that mine have gotten any better over the years, but I mean, she was really picking up on stuff. But just being out there, and I mean, we were seeing all kinds of ravens hassling a red-tailed hawk, and just all kinds of things were happening. And you just see the world through a different lens when you're out there, don't you?
Yeah, I was going to touch on that too, of just, I spend time in the outdoors, but never the amount and undisturbed amount of time that I did this weekend sitting in a blind waiting for a turkey to come. And there's so much to be learned in those times when there are no turkeys around, is something that I really am going to take away from this, is getting to see, like, hearing the geese come by and then seeing all the different birds that would come. And, you or Jen would say, oh, that's what this is. And this is why it's doing that. And that was just as valuable as the hunt itself, was the time spent outdoors not hunting. And so for that fact alone, I think you're right in that I'd like to go on hunts. I maybe don't need to be the one to pull the trigger every time, but I now know that something that I love to do, which is be outdoors and be around wildlife, the hunting is the perfect avenue for that, even if I'm not actually harvesting anything.
You're a human set of binoculars, I'll tell you that. The things you were seeing, most new hunters or just new people in spending lots of time in the outdoors, pick up on everything that's standing on the hillside. I was very impressed.
We had an interesting thing happen for us. We were, me, Jen, and Teresa, we were sitting at the base of the same tree. We had birds gobbling all around us. And there were 2 squirrels sitting out in front of us barking on the ground, just playing and barking and everything else, being noisy. And we had a couple birds getting closer. And when those birds got to the top of the hill, the squirrels jumped up into the tree. And one of us said, the turkeys are coming, because those squirrels vacated the spot where the turkeys were coming to. And so you've learned to pick up all those little critter habits and stuff. And, we saw kestrels, we saw geese. You learn when you're walking and you hear a crow call, you stop, because there's going to be a bird that could gobble. That's how we heard birds yesterday, right? They weren't responding to our calls, but we could hear one gobble. Then they started gobbling to thunder. Yeah. That we had out there. So I mean, those are all the things that you're like, oh, okay. And I'm able to recreate that. I got a 13-year-old son. And so he's instinctively seeing me stop to listen for the crow call. When a crow calls and I stop, and he goes, why are you stopping? I asked my uncle that 35 years ago when we started turkey hunting. He taught me that. But I don't know if he said do this, but I just instinctively started to do it. So that's the process that's just so cool about these experiences. And, we're really proud to be able to provide these opportunities and to be leaders within this group, because you're going to carry this on for the rest of your life as far as this experience and your family. If you have children, all of those things, you're going to say, yeah, I'm open to that. I'm comfortable with that. And that's really important to us as an organization.
Let's talk a little bit about the mission, managing habitat and turkey populations. For those that didn't know, had there been an Endangered Species Act back in, let's say, 1905, I borrow this from my colleague and friend Shane Mahoney, if there had been an Endangered Species Act-like piece of legislation back in the early 1900s, wild turkeys would have met all 5 listing criteria. No question, along with white-tailed deer, mule deer, black bear, all species of waterfowl. All of those would have met that criteria, but we brought them back without any legislation specific to wild turkeys. And now they're a very abundant game bird, widely distributed, liberally harvested. That is a huge conservation success story, long before you guys were even an entity.
Yeah. So in the early 1900s, it's estimated that there were about 200,000 turkeys.
Which isn't that many.
Spread across 34 states.
34 states.
And so when you start thinking about their states that have been the stronghold for effort. So in 1959, there was the first ever wild turkey symposium that was an aggregate of researchers and professionals that were saying, what's going on with turkeys? These are really neat animals. Let's figure this out. And so they started these research on the game, just trying to understand what was going on with them, how many eggs do they have? What's the basic vital research that's going on. Then that jump-started that when we went 11 years. We had another symposium in 1970. In 1973, we had another one. And that's when we were founded, 1973. And again, the turkey population had grown because of the game management, just the conservation movements of North America allowed them to start growing again. But then we were like, okay, let's jumpstart this. Agencies tried to do pen-reared birds. They wanted to raise birds in a pen. They wanted to release these birds. And honestly, we were serving up the poults and the turkeys to predation. They weren't survival because they're a precocial bird and they've got to see the hen and they're following the hen around to learn to eat. So it wasn't working. Then Duffy Holbrook invented the cannon net in the low country of South Carolina, which had always had birds. And we started using the cannon net to trap wild birds from one state and move it to the other parts of the state. Then other states said, hey, could we get some of those birds? We don't have any, but we'd like turkeys. And so we created a system organizationally and through our technical committee, which is made up of state wildlife agency biologists. They then allowed us to start moving birds across state lines. And we were able to receive replacement costs for the trapping efforts. Of course, you can't purchase wildlife, but we were able to create a system where we hold that money in escrow for the states. And they can use that for land purchases or turkey management. We've been able to move 200,000 turkeys across the country within states and then over 20,000 across state lines to bolster this turkey population around the country. And that's how we've got to the 6.4 million turkeys we have nationwide now.
Incredible success.
And so, but that's all based on research too. We started doing research through our organization in the late 1970s. And since that time, we've invested over $10 million in wild turkey research, all applied turkey research that the state wildlife agencies need to do the work.
These are the kinds of stories I think we forget in today's world. Population of 200,000 driven to that level because of overhunting, market hunting, and habitat manipulation. No question.
Over timber harvest, all of these other things that were unregulated. But there are some strongholds. The Allegheny State Park in New York was one of the hubs for where we used to move eastern subspecies of turkeys. South Carolina, the low country of South Carolina, because it was once thought that turkeys needed old growth forests to survive. That's what they needed because that was the only place they were found.
Sure.
But then they were like, oh no, they can live. They need disturbance. They need edge. They need forest management. They need prescribed burning. They need disturbance to create an insect base, a diverse floral fauna, ground cover. They need water and hydrology. They need the scarification of riparian areas in the Great Plains to generate cottonwoods. All of these things, they're not a keystone species, but they are an indicator species of a highly functional forest.
Yeah. And that's the perfect interface of science informing management to bring a species on the brink to now where we have nearly 7 million, plus or minus. They fluctuate.
Yeah, they fluctuate. We've seen some declines and some instability in the population over the years, but we still have a lot of turkeys. Right. We have a lot of turkey hunters.
We have a sustainable system managed by law by the states in 49 states.
49 states.
What's the one missing?
Alaska. There's Rios on Hawaii.
Oh yeah, probably introduced on the Big Island. Mm-hmm. They tried that with pronghorn too.
That was prior to NWTF, but there are Rios on Hawaii, and there are turkeys in 49 states and many Canadian provinces.
I was going to say, how about your work? Have you worked in Canada?
We have helped move and establish hunting opportunities in Canada. They actually use a Turkey 101 class or a turkey hunting class. When you go to Ontario, you have to take the class before you can actually hunt, and it's an NWTF sanctioned program. We've worked in Mexico and moved birds from Mexico into Arizona, Goulds, to bolster that population. And so it's a continental-wide effort for us to do this. And you impact so many different people, and you hear stories. You could sit here all day and tell stories about people that really focus on turkeys and all the connectivity they have to it.
Let's do a quick round robin. Jen, through your lens working with NWTF, what gives you hope for the future of turkeys and habitat and the Turkey Federation?
Wow, that's a big question. I will say also that I've only been with the Turkey Federation almost 2 years, so I'm still pretty new as a staff member. But what I see is this deep passion for turkeys, not just for turkey hunting. That's part of it for sure that I think inspires that passion in a lot of people, but the love for the bird and the needs of that species, I think it translates into all different kinds of audiences. So we talked about the 3 R's, right? Recruitment, retention, reactivation. But the 4th R is relevancy, which talks about why it's important to have hunting and to have these conservation efforts for people who aren't even interested in hunting or learning about hunting. And that piece, I think, gives me the biggest hope, because I talk to people from land conservancies who might interface with people who want information about turkey hunting, and they want information about turkey habitat, and they never really thought about hunting and its role in that. And I think that there is an interest, a curiosity, and I think if we approach lots of non-traditional audiences with that passion and that open conversation, there's hope for people who don't even necessarily care to hunt, but can see how important it is.
What are your thoughts, Teresa?
I echo everything that Jen just said. I have hope with the volunteer base that we have, the staff that we have, not just with the Turkey Federation, but abroad. We're doing the things that we need to be doing at the time to protect the wild turkey and our lifestyle. And one of the things I think about the most is all of these young people that are getting involved in learning how to hunt, not just the kiddos, but also young adults. A lot of them are coming on board, and being able to pass that knowledge and experience on to others protects our hunting heritage. So I have hope, lots of it.
Mark, what gives you hope?
One, I'll probably start off with what Jen and Teresa said, is that one thing is I really do appreciate our volunteers and our members that are helping us deliver the mission and to give us the credibility around the country to do the work with partners. But I'd probably focus on the professionals that we have in the field. The professionals saw a challenge in the 60s and 70s, 80s, to figure out how do we get turkeys on a landscape to create a restocking of turkeys into all suitable turkey habitat. And we were able to accomplish that through a program of Target 2000. But it was the challenges and then the collective, wherewithal of the wildlife professionals figured it out. We've seen some history in the past months on budgets and structures and challenges. And really, I'm really optimistic that the wildlife professionals we have today are going to be able to adapt and figure this out, and so that's probably where my hope is at, because we work with so many passionate partners, so many passionate professionals, that I think that's going to be how we can get this done. And then I'll probably kick this over to Katie. There's the fact that you are willing and wanting to come out here and with 3 strangers, you didn't know us, we met on a phone call, and to come out here and to trust us to put a shotgun in your hand, to set you up for success, whatever success you determined, and accept that, is, to me, really hopeful. That we have so many other people around the country that are willing to do that.
Yeah, I think this weekend was just a perfect example of what your organization is all about. And in my experience firsthand of you're wanting to engage people in hunting and wanting to teach them about conservation through hunting. And that's just been a really, really special experience. So I can't thank you 3 enough for coming out, and for Ed for inviting me. And I think that really does shine a light on what the National Wild Turkey Federation does and is about. And it's not just talk, it's you're on the ground, you were here. I'm a living example of what you aim to do throughout the country. And so with that, if other people want to have an experience like I've had, what's the best way for them to engage with the National Wild Turkey Federation?
Some of that's based on your geography, but we have a network of events around the country. You can go to NWTF.org and you can find your events that are the programs which Teresa helped structure. We have numerous R3 coordinators around the country that are working in specific states, and we have one that's also working on a regional level in the Northeast. And those individuals are conducting programs. They have women in outdoors events, or Jakes, or Wheeling Sportsmen, or even just mentored hunts. So check us out from that standpoint. If you're curious about turkey hunting and are really wanting an experience, I would encourage you to come to our national convention. We just came off of an 82,000 people came to Nashville, Tennessee to learn anything and everything about turkey hunting. I've been going to those things for 20 years now. This was our largest ever. Everybody is in a good mood. Everybody's happy to see you. Everybody's welcoming. There's no judgment. It's just come in, tell your experiences. If you're a first-time turkey hunter, you're going to get invites. If you raised your hand and said, I want to go turkey hunting, somebody's going to come over and probably take you turkey hunting. So that's an experience there in Nashville. But honestly, it's just NWTF.org. We got programs for all ages, levels, experience, room for more volunteers. We always need more volunteers because we want to grow and get to that 500,000 members. And we need volunteers to help us do that. So that's the best route. And I'll turn it over to Teresa or Jen. Anything I missed?
I think that pretty well covers it. I think also looking for that contact information if you have a local R3 coordinator, just in case you can't find an event that suits what you're looking for, they can probably connect you with somebody or get you into a mentorship.
Yeah, and reach out to your state wildlife agency. Many of those have programs. Becoming an Outdoor Woman, Take One, Make One to come to mind. You know, they've got R3 programs of themselves. We're not the only game in town. Reach out to pheasants, quail forever, reach out to ducks unlimited, mule deer. We want people to understand hunting. So use these different, in conservation. So we're not the only game in town, and we're partners with all those groups, and we're not in competition with them. We're building this collectively.
Well, thanks to all of you for being with us, and thanks for the great experience that both Katie and I had. National Wild Turkey Federation has been a great partner with the Wildlife Society, and we'll keep working together to train new biologists, train the middle and aging biologists alike, and work together for not just turkey, but wildlife conservation broadly.
Hey, it's Katie. Thanks so much for listening to the Our Wildlife's podcast. If you're loving what you're hearing, could you help us out? Leaving us a review, rating our show, or sharing it with a friend will help us continue to grow the Our Wildlife's podcast. If there's something in particular you want to hear about, send us an email to comms@wildlife.org, and we'll see if we can't find someone to bring on the show. Thanks again for listening. We'll catch you next week.